it's interesting to think about coffee as communication of a region, communication of a soil, of a producer's practice when they're processing the coffees, when they're growing coffee, all of those things go into it. And to be able to clearly communicate those elements is a pretty spectacular goal, and it's an addicting goal. Like I said, I think it's one that has a strong parallel to what you have to do when you write, which is to communicate as clearly as you possibly can. I would like for somebody to taste the coffee and to have a sort of giddy, childlike reaction in the same way that you did when you were a kid and you went to like some sort of fair and you had, a big puff of cotton candy that you bit into and the flavors just kind of dazzled you. I think that's such a cool experience. It's an experience that unfortunately, as we get older, it fades. There aren't many opportunities to have those kinds of from a culinary perspective, childlike wonder experiences. I think I've had that with coffee, and I think that's why I got hooked on coffee. And I guess that kind of thing that I'm hoping somebody that drinks my coffee will experience. Taking a cup and taking a sip, and for a brief moment forgetting about anything except the flavor, and kind of marveling at it and getting to live in that moment for a second. I mean, that's just incredibly cool. And I can't think of too many other things in life that can jar you from the world, remove you from things, and you get to focus entirely on one thing, and it's a really gratifying thing. That's the flavor of the coffee. So I think it's that. I mean, I think it's, trying to give somebody a cup that will allow them to have an experience that is kind of nothing but pure joy, and that mirrors the type of experience that they might have had when they were a kid eating that cotton candy at a fair. Of course, it's a more refined flavor at this point. The science of roasting is unavoidable, and it's dominant. And what you can do, and where you can be creative, is kind of respect the science of the roasting, what's happening during the roast. And all of those things augment the eventual flavor, and you really can create a cup that's unique. You take the same bean, you give it to two different roasters, and they'll come out with a different product. But there is this kind of underlying thing involved with roasting that's unavoidable, and that's that the beans go through a transformation when they're in that drum or, whatever chamber you're using when you're roasting. And that part is totally unavoidable. I think that's really cool. And I think in a way that's kind of freeing, because it's like a combination of creative output, but then also with this kind of grounded scientific thing that you don't have any control of, that you really have to obey in a way. I mean, there's no getting around, the coffee entering first crack in a development phase, and there's no getting around the way a bean might want to behave when it experiences moisture loss, when it starts to cool rapidly, and when all of a sudden your rate of rise begins to plummet. And those are all things that affect flavor, but they're not things that you are really in control of. What you can do is you can identify those things, and then you can adjust parts of your roast habits to compensate and to create the best possible cup. But it is really cool that the beans have a life of their own in that roaster. You throw a coffee into a roaster, it will behave in a totally unique way, in a way that's completely different than any other bean that you throw into it. And your job is really to follow how it's behaving and to compensate via adjustments in your machine so that you create the best roast. So this whole thing for me, I've been roasting for about 10 years, and it really has always been a hobby. I never intended to start a business out of this. This was something that I did because I'm obsessed, and that's I'm not being hyper. I'm obsessed with coffee. I think most roasters are, and I didn't intend for this to become a business. A lot of it happened organically because with the way the world has had to shutter shops and stuff recently, and it's been a little more difficult for people to get high quality coffees. I've just had a ton of people start reaching out to me knowing that I roast, and they seem to think I roast well, and so they asked me to roast stuff for them, and it kind of snowballed and turned into this accidental business. And the really cool thing about it is, because I didn't plan for any of this, it's all very much a surprise, and I feel along for the ride. I didn't, sit down and say, here's my business plan and here's what I want to do. Instead, it sort of was like the business happened on its own. And I think in a way, it's like the business found me. I didn't create the business necessarily. And I really don't want to do anything with this other than create coffee that I absolutely love. I currently, and maybe this could change, I guess you never know, but I don't really offer any blends. I don't love roasting super dark, so I don't do that. And the focus of the company is entirely on single origins, on rare processed coffees, on unusual varietals and stuff like that. And I'd like to keep it that way. For me, the exciting part of roasting and the exciting part of having this coffee company is to be able to source the best coffees I can find, hopefully the best in the world, and roast them in a way that I think communicates all of their flavors in a really clear fashion, and get to share with anybody that buys a bag from me all of the joy that I get from drinking these things. It's really a passion project, and I intend for it to remain that way. And it's been growing, and I would love for it to continue to grow. But the focus is really on just creating stuff that I love all the time, and the hope is that other people will love it too. I'm Gary Lundy from My Friends Coffee, and this is Roaster Spotlight.